And normally when you show reports like these, the government is very dismissive and they say that this is a propaganda spread by the opposition.
This
But
is
how
not opposition.
yes.
Channel after channel, at least the YouTube channel is showing. I don't watch, legacy media, so I don't know. You might have seen what the mainstream TV channels are showing. I have no idea what the mainstream TV channels are showing because I genuinely cannot bear to watch them. It may well be that many of these early on, within the first 10 days of the war, this was certainly there was a lot of attack on LOP as well as the opposition that they are spreading panic. Well, they're just only playing the role of the opposition by warning the government.
How assured can we be, Professor Mehrotra, when Prime Minister Modi assures the nation saying that there's nothing to worry, we have enough strategic reserves, but the reality is that we are dependent for LPG and the LNG, both on the countries which are in the conflict zone, and we still do not know when this war is ending, despite what Donald Trump has said yesterday.
Right. No, Donald Trump's word doesn't count for anything. I mean, he was even lying when he was talking about, we are negotiating with the Iranians. They were not negotiating at all. And the Iranians have already said in no uncertain terms, their official agency has said, we will never negotiate with the United States for a long time to come until they show that they are actually serious, because they've been attacked twice. So anyway, never mind that. The war is going to continue for many more weeks to come. So,
globally, what could we expect now?
Right. What we can expect now, but what we've already seen let me just summarize for the benefit of your viewers in 1 minute. You see, Asia is most dependent upon Gulf supplies of energy, including all the various elements that I spoke about. And more dependent in many ways than us are Japan and South Korea. China is dependent, but to a much lesser extent. Series of other Southeast Asian countries are dependent, although Indonesia, Malaysia are also suppliers. But point is, Korea and Japan are very big economies of the world, and like us in India, they import a fair bit from the region. So they are already facing the brunt of the rise in crude oil prices.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. Recognizing the significance of the impact of the conflict in West Asia on the global economy and its effect on India, the Cabinet Committee on Security, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this Sunday discussed steps to diversify the sources of import of chemicals, pharma, petrochemicals, and other industrial sectors while drawing comfort from the stock of fertilizer and coal. At least this is what has gone on record. But how serious is the crisis? We do not know. But on the ground, what the reports are coming, they are scary. Whether it is the crisis of the LPG, whether it is the oil crisis. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi spoke in Lok Sabha, and today, of course, he's going to speak in Rajya Sabha. And he had underlined the country's opposition to attacks on citizens and energy and transport infrastructure. He said that strikes on commercial ships and obstacles to international trade are unacceptable. He also said that as far as diplomacy was concerned, India's role was very clear. And I'm going to quote what exactly he said, that we have expressed our deep concern about this conflict from the very beginning. I have also spoken to all the representatives of the West Asian nations. I have urged everyone to reduce tensions and end this struggle. Now, this is what Prime Minister Modi said on record. But there is a huge difference in what he says and what the situation on the ground is. So today I'm going to center my conversation on the global impact, the economic impact of the West Asia conflict and also on India? And supposing if there is a ceasefire, if the war stops, can the impact be mitigated, or it will still take time for things to come to normalcy? Joining me this evening is the renowned economist Santosh Mehrotra. So, thank you so much for joining on HW News. My first question to you is, how great is the economic impact? And I'm going to talk about India first and then come to the global impact. Yes, sir.
So the Indian impact, of course, is of a very direct nature in terms of LPG household supplies and LPG supplies for restaurants and for industry. Uh, Now, I think one technical clarification that's very important upfront is that LPG is essentially manufactured from crude petroleum. It is not derived from liquefied natural gas, and there might be some confusion about this in the minds of people, so I wanted to set this aside. LNG is what gets supplied to homes when we get cooking gas through pipes. Piped gas is liquefied natural gas. It's not the same gas that goes into cylinders, which is also used for cooking. So, there doesn't seem to be, as of now, any crisis in respect of LNG, although a very significant share of India's LNG exports also come from the Gulf. And of course, Gulf total production, particularly on account of Qatar's refinery being knocked out by Iranian attacks, has been impacted, and it's very difficult for us in India to keep a store of LNG. So we don't have backup of LNG supply. However, the households are not impacted by LNG. LNG also gets used for industrial uses and for power production. So let me return therefore to the direct and most immediate impact which households and restaurants are experiencing and also industries experiencing in terms of LPG. Now, the biggest impact, of course, to begin with, is the shortage in supply. So let's just separate out two types of impacts. One is the price impact, and the other is the sheer volume impact, meaning the supply. If the supply itself is become limited since the war broke out on the 28th of February, then clearly, had we maintained LPG cylinder stocks, then this crisis would not have arisen. Now, unfortunately, it appears increasingly that LPG cylinder stocks were not being maintained, as a result of which, within a week of the war breaking out, the crisis had already begun to show itself, with the government of India increasing first prices for commercial household as well as for Ujjwala gas cylinder owners. And then, of course, the big crisis is in terms of the volume. In addition, of course, when the volumes are restricted, because supply inflow from the warehouses at state level are not coming in, so a black market emerges. So people who are totally dependent for cooking gas at home, particularly relatively low income households, and I'm thinking here of essentially the bottom 50% of the population. For let's say, this is a broad generalization. The top 50%, even if they are not getting gas cylinder, they could switch to electricity. Now they could. It's not that they would want to, but they could. The bottom 50% can't even really do that, because the majority of them, even the women in those households, actually work in urban areas. So now, if that's the case, households are being forced to eat outside because the black market price in the market has shot up dramatically. Now, the impact of this is also has to be analyzed. What do I mean? The big impact that's being felt is where LPG cylinders are used in small enterprises. Small enterprises across the country, whether it's in textiles or ceramics or in the use in glass, or even gems and jewelry. In all of those cases, small units, especially in Gujarat, but also in Punjab and everywhere across the country, the small units are beginning to close down. Impact of that, again, knock-on effect, workers, particularly the migrant workers, in much the same way as happened after COVID, after waiting for 3 or 4 days and finding that the black market has gone through the roof, because these relatively poor, meaning casual day workers, they would either eat in the from the thelawala or the dhaba, or if they were cooking, which is their preference, then they are buying the cylinder at a rate of, they were buying at the rate of, from their landlord, at 100 rupees per kilogram. Now, of course, that's way above what you and I would pay, because we get it for the cylinder. We pay only 900 rupees, and our cylinder is 14 kilograms, or just over 14 kilograms. These poor people were already paying 100, but now they're having to pay 300 per kilogram or 500 per kilogram. They just don't earn that much to be able to do that. Now, so this is a crisis. So migrant labor is returning literally in the thousands. How long this carries on, we will have to see to what
No,
extent.
but something very, very similar, Professor Mehrotra, to what we saw in COVID, like the laborers, the migrant laborers returning to their villages. Is it something like that? And normally, when you show reports like these, the government is very dismissive, and they say that this is a propaganda spread by the opposition.
It's
But how?
not opposition.
Yes.
Channel after channel, at least the YouTube channel is showing. I don't watch, legacy media, so I don't know. You might have seen what the mainstream TV channels are showing. I have no idea what the mainstream TV channels are showing, because I genuinely cannot bear to watch them. It may well be that many of these early on, within the first 10 days of the war, this was certainly, there was a lot of attack on LOP as well as the opposition, that they are spreading panic. Well, they're just only playing the role of the opposition by warning the government. Now, had the government actually acted really fast, even at that stage, and increased production, which the Prime Minister now said yesterday, that production is increased. I don't know when the production started increasing. There's a crisis out there. You may blame the opposition, you may blame whoever you wish to do, but it's for you to see. I mean, all you have to do is to just sort of take your camera to the railway station and around the country, and you see migrant workers returning. Now, it may not be, Neelu, yet at that stage or that level of reverse migration, because please remember, after 25th of March 2020, when the national lockdown was imposed, your viewers may or may not know this, but in that year alone, 35 million workers went back to their homes. Just that year, 2020, 2021, until March of 21. That 3.5 crores went back in just that year. More continued to go back in COVID wave 2, again in COVID wave 3, and because job growth had been decimated, especially in the MSME sector.
By the way, Professor Mehrotra, today is 24th March. that same evening when Prime Minister Modi announced the national lockdown in
Oh my
2020.
God, you reminded us of that horrific day, because it led to such a catastrophe for the lives of millions of people. Now, between 25th of March of 2020 and June end 2024, Nilu, if your viewers should know that reverse migration continued and millions of workers continued to go back. Some of course, returned, but many more were still returning. So the number of workers in agriculture that were added to agriculture, your viewers should know, was 80 million. 8 crore workers were added to agriculture. This is the opposite of what should be happening in a developing country, where workers leave agriculture to get work in non-farm industry, construction, services, because wages are higher there. Here you've had a situation for the last 5 years, Neelu, where workers have continued to go back. This is a tragic situation. Now, if as a result of our mismanagement during this war in the last 2 or 3 weeks, if workers are now going back again, this is an even greater catastrophe. Really big, really big. Now,
How assured can we be, Professor Mehrotra, when Prime Minister Modi assures the nation, saying that there's nothing to worry, we have enough strategic reserves, but the reality is that we are dependent for LPG and the LNG, both on the countries which are in the conflict zone, and we still do not know when this war is ending, despite what
right,
Donald Trump has said yesterday.
right. No, Donald Trump's word doesn't count for anything. I mean, he was even lying when he was talking about, oh, we are negotiating with the Iranians. They were not negotiating at all. And the Iranians have already said in no uncertain terms, their official agency has said, we will never negotiate with United States for a long time to come, until they show that they are actually serious, because they've been attacked twice. So anyway, never mind that. The war is going to continue for many more weeks to come, and I would go so far as to say many more months to come, because here we are dealing with, since you've raised that issue as to how long the war is going to continue, and this is going to continue to have a major impact on our economy and our workers and our macroeconomy. And I'll come back to the macroeconomy in a second, because I haven't said anything. I've only talked about the the microeconomic impacts on small scale industry, and hence the work labor force. The war is going to continue for the simple geo-economic reason that the Iranians have been waiting for to be attacked for the last 40 years. Please understand that within months of the revolution, the Islamic Revolution taking place in 1979, when the Shah was dethroned, and the theocratic regime, which still continues to be elected, came to power. The Iraqis, supported by the Americans, attacked them. Saddam Hussein attacked them. So for 8 years they suffered that, and after that, of course, all trust was lost with the United States. And we know that over this period, the United States has set up a series of military bases in practically every Gulf country and every Arab country. And all of the purpose of the US bases, please understand, your viewers should know this following fact, that after the Second World War, the United States has set up between 800 to 900 military bases across 80 countries in the world. And a dozen countries of those 80 countries are located in this region itself. Right? India is free of any bases, but that's not the case as far as many South Asian countries, and of course the vast majority of the Arab countries have bases. Under the circumstances, the Iranians have said, enough is enough. We cannot continue to feel threatened by two nuclear powers, the United States as well as Israel. Israel is clearly has never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, had already arrived at an agreement with President Obama, and there was a joint agreement on the nuclear issue, that they were not planning to develop nuclear weapons, but they have since been attacked 2 or 3 times, even while negotiations are going. So they're not trusting either the Iranians or the Israelis or the Americans. So the war will continue. So we have to prepare. Point one. Let me come to the macroeconomic impacts, because your concerns, of course, are broad, India specific, and then we can go to the global concerns, the global impacts. The broader macroeconomic impact clearly are going to be that, you see, it's not just that we get oil or LNG or PNG from the Gulf. There are a whole series of other products that we get, and those have knock-on effects in our economy. So actual fertilizer manufactured there, we import, plus, of course, the inputs for fertilizer are imported because petroleum is essentially an input for fertilizer, particularly for urea. 83% of our consumption of urea, is actually dependent upon that region, the Gulf region. So clearly, supply as well as price of fertilizer has already risen. Now, what is the implication of this? Please, there's going to be a fiscal implication for the government of India. What's the fiscal implication? It's very important for your viewers to understand. This is a union government which is already facing a fiscal deficit to GDP ratio of about 4.4%. For the post-COVID, it has been in the process of trying to compress its fiscal deficit. It has made mistakes by cutting on, personal income taxes in the last year's budget. Before that, in the middle of 2019, cutting corporate income taxes. The result of all that were massive reductions in its revenues. So it's having to borrow, and because of its having to borrow, its interest costs have risen. So point is, it's facing a massive fiscal constraint. Now imagine if here is a country like India whose fertilizer subsidies amount to 1.85 lakh crores, 1.85 trillion rupees, of which some 85% is accounted for by urea, because urea is consumed in excess because the government subsidizes it through its fertilizer subsidy, and that has excessively led to the excessive consumption of urea in our country, which has depleted the quality of the soil. Soil quality has depleted. Now, maybe one good thing might come out of it, that the government might be, with its back to the wall, the prices having risen, will not bear the cost of the fertilizer subsidy rising further. It's already very high, rising further. However, my suspicion is that it will not raise fertilizer prices, it has not raised petrol prices, despite the fact that international crude petroleum market price has gone from around $60 before the war to about 110, rough order of magnitude. Now, and of course, as a result of this, the demand for dollars has increased. Therefore, the rupee is sinking.
Mehrotra, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to take up a report, and we'll come to the currency bit a little later, which has spread a lot of confusion. There is a TOI report which is doing the rounds on the social media that, I want to show the cutting. Amina, if you're there backstage, and if you can please play that cutting. Now, here it is. This is a TOI report which says your next LPG refill could be of 10 kgs instead of 14.2 kgs. Now, this is, of course, they are saying that the government hasn't said anything, but refiners are saying that this is a proposal which is there before the government. Do you think that the government can really bite the bullet and bring down the capacity of the LPG cylinder to 10 kgs? What is going to happen? What could be the impact there?
Well, everything will depend upon what is the per kilo price of that LPG cylinder. I mean, today we know that it's already been raised to over 900 rupees, right? That's the household cylinder cost for non-subsidized and household consumption. I mean, if they are going to give it for the same price, but give only 10 kilos, the
Yes.
consumers will be up in arms. That's like
See,
raising
government was
costs.
dismissing it. Government was dismissing it yesterday as rumors, but today Times of India has published that story.
They may have published the story, Neelu, but please understand that does the country have a supply of 10 kilo cylinders? You need to have 10 kilos of cylinder stock. Otherwise, this is going to cause a crisis. So, for the moment, I would dismiss that. Let me return to
Yes.
the other macro issue, because clearly the fact that the rupee continues to sink and has shrunk to 94 now to the dollar, it means our import costs will going to rise. So on the one hand, what you have a situation where fertilizer prices will rise, gas prices are rising, and if petrol prices rise soon after these three elections are over, the state assembly elections, meaning Assam, Bengal, and and sorry, which is the third one? It's Tamil Nadu, right?
Tamil Nadu,
Right.
Kerala, Puducherry, West Bengal, and
Ah,
Assam.
sorry, there you are. So there you are. So it's four or five. All of them going to the polls. The government is going to raise their petrol prices. There's no question about it. All of this inevitably is going to, and along with the sinking rupee, the government will be forced to raise petrol prices, and that's all that's going, and diesel prices, and perhaps CNG prices, which goes into taxis and often buses and so on. That's going to lead to a inflationary spiral. You're going to get an inflation spiral coming from all of these forces. In addition, you already have volume impacts that I was referring to earlier, that you have supply shock because there isn't available. That will increase the market prices of a variety of things automatically.
So, what I'm given to understand from what you have said so far is that India is going to face a massive crisis where we'll see price rise, we'll see the rupee falling, there'll be probably there could we could see more unemployment because as what the ground reports say that the migrant laborers they are going back to their native villages, we could see more of unemployment. And the biggest question is now we don't have a Manrega like before. So if they go back to the villages, what will they do? That's another question. But coming to the global part of it, because we just
Yeah, yeah.
have 5 minutes. Uh,
So,
Globally, what could we expect now?
right. What we can expect now, but what we've already seen in, let me just summarize for the benefit of your viewers in 1 minute. You see, Asia is most dependent upon Gulf supplies of energy, including all the various elements that I spoke about. And more dependent in many ways than us are Japan and South Korea. China is dependent, but to a much lesser extent. Series of other Southeast Asian countries are dependent, although Indonesia, Malaysia are also suppliers. But point is Korea and Japan are very big economies of the world, and like us in India, they import a fair bit from the region. So they're already facing the brunt of the rise in crude oil prices. So the rise in crude oil prices is going to have a ratchet effect on prices within each of these economies, and so the only beneficiaries of this rise in crude oil prices are Russia and the Gulf countries and countries like Venezuela or maybe Brazil, which are exporters, producers and exporters of surplus oil and energy products. The rest of the world is taking a hit. Can you imagine the vast majority of African countries, how severely they're being impacted? The United States is benefiting, Russia is benefiting. The EU is also has over the last 4 years become much more dependent on the Gulf region for LNG in particular, because its supply of energy coming from Russia had been, cut off, partly because of the economic sanctions that the United States and Western countries imposed on Russia, and partly because the Americans blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which would supply Germany and many other Northern European countries with energy. The result is that the Europeans are now apparently banking much more on their northern neighbor Norway, and perhaps trying to move to um, the Arctic source. To what extent they will succeed, we'll have to wait to see. But these are very preliminary moves. They are also impacted adversely, of course, by the rise in oil prices. Their economies, all of Europe has their economies have slowed down, had slowed down for the last 5 years post COVID. They have not truly recovered. Your EU's growth rate in the past year or even in this year is expected to be barely 1%. And and the war continues, and they are committing more expenditure towards the Ukraine war. I'm talking about the Ukraine war here. Anyway, so you can see that the impending impact. Let me just say a few words about the US. The US is in a sense partly benefited because it's an oil exporter, energy exporter. But the fact remains that its market is an open market, and therefore gas prices, what they call petrol gas prices in the United States generally have risen by nearly $1 per gallon. They used to be over a gallon, because they used to be around $2 a gallon. They've already gone well over $3 a gallon, and they're inching towards $4 a gallon, which is a doubling. And the doubling is going to happen very quickly. I mean, in California, where they of course have a greater reliance on renewable energy and on electric vehicles, unlike the rest of the country, in California, gas price, meaning petrol price, has gone to $8 to $9 a gallon. So all of this means that the US consumer is going to be impacted by the rise in inflation. The rise in inflation, we know, is going to be very damaging for the Trump regime, especially when the midterm elections are more forthcoming. United States has midterm elections happening for 1/3 of House of Representatives, which is their Lok Sabha equivalent, and 1/3 of Senate seats, which is their Rajya Sabha equivalent, in November. And so that election season is coming up clearly at the end of the spring, and we are in the middle of spring already there. So you can imagine how this is going to adversely impact Trump's party's chances, which is one reason, coming back to yesterday's Trump's announcement. First he announces, threatens Iran, in 48 hours, you better open up Hormuz. Then, within 24 hours, he comes and says, oh, we've been talking to them, and I'm putting a pause for 5 days of bombing on them because we would like this negotiation to continue, and we put a pause. Now, obviously, he put a pause because he saw that the escalation of the war had already caused, firstly, further rise in crude international prices, and it had also resulted in the capital markets, meaning Dow Jones and S&P, which had been collapsing. But when he put the 5-day pause,
the markets bounced back.
The markets bounced back up slightly.
Yes.
Compared to 27th of February, before the war began, the markets are certainly still down somewhere between 5.5% to 7% in the US. All of this hurts the big billionaires of United States, who are the ones who support Trump. So please try and understand that his back is against the wall. He would like this war to end. However, practically everything that they have been doing and Israel has been doing, because Israel doesn't want this war to end too quickly. They think that they can bring, Iran to its knees. Iran, on the other hand, firmly believes, on account of its massive stock of ballistic as well as hypersonic missiles,
Right.
which remain untouched because they are underground, and neither the Americans nor the Israeli bombs and or whatever planes are not being able to reach them. And what is happening in Israel is that the Israel is getting hammered. They've lost about, by last count, information is that 400 buildings across the three cities. There are only three cities
Yes.
in that country. It's a small country. They've even attacked they've taken out nuclear scientists in a nuclear site in what is called Demona. So the point I'm making is that this war is not ending, and the
Absolutely.
the world economy is highly likely to slip into a recession, and we are already taking a battering, which we've had good opportunity to discuss. Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm glad we could have an exhaustive conversation on the economic impact, because this was something which wasn't being discussed, because everyone is busy discussing the geopolitics. So what the situation in India is, what could be the global impact, at least this 33 minutes of conversation would give you a slice of that. Thank you so much, Professor Mehrotra, for joining on HW News. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.